I understood the magnitude of postpartum depression after I became a mom, right? I didn't go through any sort of depression. At least I don't know if I went through because I don't feel like I did.
Yeah.
It was a fairly nice experience through and through. I had a lot of support because of my husband. But then I understood the magnitude of it after I became a mom. And then I think it just amplified when I heard this one story a friend told me about her friend who committed suicide.
Wow.
And this was not immediately after, it was much later. I think it's probably, I know, after a year or so. I don't clearly remember, but she was like, she went through whatever she went through and nobody could identify what she went through. And then one fine day, she brings her son, her child, places a child next to the father on, in the dining area where the family is sitting, and says, feed the child. She goes back into her room and obviously never came back out because she hung herself.
Yeah. And
I can't even continue because my heart is
it's
feeling so,
heartbreaking.
yeah. I mean, I don't even know what she went through or so many other moms go through with postpartum depression, but I only understood that it's so real that it is taking so many lives. And then when we had to do this postpartum series, I'm like, oh my God, the one thing we need to talk about is postpartum depression, because this is something that nobody is talking about, right? It's in silence. So please, Divya, I think let's start with what is postpartum depression. I mean, we all hear anxiety depression, and then there is something called postpartum depression. So let's just talk about what is postpartum depression, how do you kind of really, what are the factors? How do you identify?
Sure. I want to say first and foremost, I think postpartum depression can happen to any mom, because in my work, I've heard a lot of moms say that, well, I had great family support, so why did I have postpartum? Maybe I wasn't strong enough, or maybe I missed something. So there's a lot of blame and shame and silence, like you rightly said, but it can affect anyone, and for different reasons. And sometimes we may not be able to know exactly what the reason is. But symptoms of depression are, persistent or sad mood most of the time. I think sometimes when you want to make a diagnosis professionally, you should be feeling that for at least about 2 weeks or more. You lose interest in things that you naturally would love to do. Kind of zest and pleasure in things kind of goes away. You might retreat, you might seclude yourself more, you may feel like nobody understands you. And of course, as you know, sleep is one of the biggest disruptions, right? And one of the biggest challenges. And it's so critical for our overall well-being that when you have to wake up every few hours, right? It does make sense that that's going to affect your mood. It's going to affect your energy levels, how you function, how you react, how you respond to people, right? Appetite can also kind of get disrupted. You may feel also, I think, anxiety and worry just naturally. Even though we're talking about depression, you can also have postpartum stress and anxiety. So the symptoms are almost the same as what we would call clinical depression, or what you hear of as depression.
Right.
But the differentiating factor is that, one, this is happening at arguably one of the most demanding times in your life, right? You're going through all this change. Physically, you're trying to heal. You're now responsible for an infant and all of, the weight that carries. And then you have depression on top of that, right? So it can be really overwhelming and scary. And of course, more severe forms, self-harm can happen. In things like postpartum psychosis, you can have a lot of symptoms where you're not in touch with reality as much. You might even have thoughts of harming your child. Those are like medical emergencies that you must get help for, that you must reach out to a psychiatrist or a hospital. But another factor that's really important, I think, to understand with postpartum is that when you're on the journey, there's a really hopeful, dreamlike, fantastic expectation of motherhood. as it should be, right? You feel exhilarated, you feel joy, you imagine for yourself what this is going to be like, how you're going to bond with your baby. You don't account for postpartum in that, you know.